Later in my journey, about 2 months into my awakening, I was ready to abandon my spiritual journey entirely. I had just had a massive amount of dark material and traumas come to the surface to finally be seen and processed, and my psyche was overloaded. It simply was too much, too fast, and I was starting to regret embarking on the path to begin with. I had no clue what I had signed up for, let alone my soul's all in burn, baby, burn persona at that point. Then one of my master teachers, one of the first ones, Amy, came to the rescue and pulled me back from the edge. Amy is a 60 something Tampa native who somehow managed to transform a life of unspeakable trauma and abuse into pure liquid love. She's the kind of woman who greets you with bear hugs that feel like coming home, whose voice carries the musical quality of someone who's learned to find joy in the rubble of repeated heartbreak. I call her Auntie Amy. From her newly found state in Brahman consciousness, she told me something that completely reframed my relationship with pain. Suffering is one of the fastest ways to burn karma. What if all this darkness you're walking through is just the universe's way of fast tracking your evolution? She told me during a particularly rough patch I was in. Like cramming for finals, but for your soul. This was another reason, yet another reason, why spirituality could help you better adjust to life. Knowing that your pain actually serves you. It's not just random cosmic cruelty. Every moment of agony is literally burning through the spiritual debt you've accumulated across lifetimes. The worse it gets, the more karma you're clearing. So that begs the question, what if suffering was actually the LCS's most efficient way of clearing decades of karmic debris in months instead of lifetimes? What if all this agony wasn't punishment, but purification? I detail karma in depth in a later chapter and in future videos, but for now, it's worth noting that there's no LCS point system where suffering automatically equals spiritual progress. It's not like there's some divine accountant named Larry sitting around up there tallying up your pain and deducting karma points. There are people who whip and crucify themselves in the Philippines during the Easter season every year, seeking spiritual purification and atonement for their sins through self inflicted suffering, believing that personal sacrifice will draw them closer to Jesus. This is a perfect example of how intentionally seeking suffering can completely miss the point. It's the same as those businessmen in certain parts of India who sell you fish to release back into the river for good karma. The LCS doesn't work like a divine vending machine where you insert pain tokens and receive enlightenment credits in return. That's just the mind trying to cheat code its way through doing the actual work. And listen, I get it. I get it. When you're drowning in your own pain, the last thing you want to hear is some enlightened perspective about how your suffering is actually serving you. Like when you're vomiting your brains out from food poisoning in a sweltering open air Cambodian hospital bathroom, convinced you might actually die on your knees in front of a squat toilet thousands of miles from home. A true thing that actually happened to me. Go to a non-dual teacher when you're suicidal, and many will say, it's all the mind. Just observe the thoughts without attaching to them. Right. Thanks for that hefty dose of cosmic gaslighting, love. They mean well, but sometimes it's hard for them to communicate to normies from anything but the highest truth. One master, Naringa, joked when describing why some masters jump straight to the ultimate reality when someone's suffocating in relative pain. Kind of like a single cell in your body being told it's part of a human being. The cell just knows its own little function. It can't comprehend the whole organism until consciousness expands beyond cellular walls. Always remember, she told me, that not every enlightened teacher can meet you where you are, and recognize that sophisticated spiritual insights require sophisticated readiness. The same way you wouldn't expect a mountain climbing expert to help you tie your shoelaces, they're focused on the summit, not the ground level basics. But as you do raise your consciousness levels and then go further, more and more of these teachings will start to make sense. But in the beginning, it's spiritual bypassing disguised as wisdom and only causes more confusion and feelings of inadequacy as you as if you needed more of that, right? That's why it's important to still go to therapy, take your meds, balance the spiritual with the therapeutic, and find teachers who can sit in the mess with you instead of pointing toward the light. Admittedly, though I've made great strides, I still struggle to this day with striking that balance, but it hasn't been from lack of trying. During those initial and even subsequent years of chronic anxiety and crushing depression, I had tried every modality and treatment imaginable. I cycled through over 50 different SSRIs, SNRIs, DRIs, MAOIs, antipsychotics, and benzodiazepines, along with dozens of experimental peptides and supplements. At one point, I was injecting Ukrainian pig brain juice into my glutes daily because I'd read somewhere it could reset neural pathways. I was diagnosed with major depressive disorder, generalized anxiety disorder, panic disorder, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, treatment resistant depression, bipolar disorder, borderline personality disorder, avoidant personality disorder, obsessive compulsive disorder, and every other acronym in the DSM 5. You see, psychiatrists have a 100% batting average when it comes to finding something wrong with you. If the Buddha himself showed up for an appointment, they diagnosed him with pathological peace disorder and sent him packing with olanzapine and a referral to learn some healthy coping mechanism for his excessive mindfulness. I worked through dialectical behavioral therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, and acceptance and commitment therapy with little success. I experimented with neurofeedback devices, microdosing mushrooms, and even tried ketamine infusion therapy, the latter of which completely dissolved me into what psychonauts call a K-hole. It's a disassociative void so unspeakably empty that even the notion of God disappeared. Were a pet rock to magically appear in that void, I'd have cried tears of joy, like the last man on earth finding another human, awestruck by the fear grace of even that mute companionship. It was the single most horrifying experience of my entire life to that point. And it wasn't until years later that I learned it was the LCS that was showing me my ultimate terror as a spiritual test. I needed to see total abandonment and nothingness so that I could later recognize and anchor to the most magnificent experience of existence. I experimented with every diet imaginable: veganism, carnivore, paleo, keto, convinced that nutrition held the key. I cycled through workout regimens like they were seasonal clothing: CrossFit, yoga, powerlifting, and running. I moved cities thinking geography could save me, and picked up new hobbies, believing distraction might work where treatment had failed. Nothing stuck. Nothing delivered the relief I so desperately sought.